It's 7 o'clock. We've got either 10 or 11 members of FinCom here. So it's 7 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. With that, we'll take item 2, public participation. Any members of the public who have anything to say? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look through the minutes? Are there any questions or concerns?
I move to accept.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Which minutes are these?
The approval of the minutes of the 20th, I guess, do we have to do them individually or can we take them in as a?
Well, I think on some of these are subcommittees, so you're just gonna have subcommittees vote on them.
No, I was doing.
But I do like your style of moving things along, Doug. So.
No. So that was the approval of the finance committee meeting.
2 weeks from 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, anybody have any questions about the subcommittee town hall? Okay. Hearing none.
We don't need.
Motion to approve.
We're getting down there. On
And it has to be from the town hall subcommittee.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, if I may, I'm on the town hall subcommittee. I don't know that we have quorum because there are 4 members of our subcommittee, but I only see 2 on this call. I don't know if we have quorum to vote on the minutes. I mean, I don't know, Steve, unless.
Yeah, you need 3.
You do not, because it's not a quorum.
Yes.
Right.
Good thing you're there, Terry, to keep them in line.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, maybe a 3rd member will show up.
Right.
Yeah,
can
we
vote.
get, I think to table it to later.
We'll table it till later. Does the police department subcommittee have a quorum?
We have full presence tonight, Mr. Butler.
Oh,
Present. That is excellent, Mr. Boothry. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for the police department subcommittee?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Who seconded?
I did, Steve.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All of the police department subcommittee members in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. The motion carries. Now we're on to item 4, the fiscal 23 budgets and subcommittee comments. Steve has asked us to take these slightly out of order. The town council will go last, just because Steve has to be here for the duration of the meeting. From the IT department, why don't we take the IT department first? That's the next one up. Who's presenting that one? And does the IT subcommittee have anything to add to?
Well, as yet, we've not heard from Kevin. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So do we typically hear from Kevin first? Because when we spoke in front of town council, I got to go first and Kevin had to say most of what Brian already said. So I think it's only fair that he gets to go first this time and then I can say the same thing in return.
Okay.
I liked it better, Brian, when you did it. Okay, the IT budget, we're requesting an increase of $10,035 over the current fiscal year. There is a decrease in personal services of $1,512. You can see page 5 of the actual budget, all the salaries in there. Overall, there was a salary increase of $23,488. But that increase was offset by an increase in the transfer from the municipal light department of $25,000. If you look at Todd's salary, he got more of a bump than the other people under him. He's going to be taking on more work, doing extra hours for work that needs to be done over at the light department. That's why the light department is kicking in that extra money. There are salary contractual and negotiated increases in there. On the contractual services side, there is an increase of $7,587. The main reason for that increase is the Yearly software maintenance costs, every year it usually goes up anywhere between 3% and 5%. Small decrease in office supplies, $500. Sundry charges did increase, $4,460. That's for additional Zoom meetings and some licenses that Todd needed to purchase. Total budget request for fiscal 23, $381,706.
Any input from the subcommittee, Brian?
Sure. So, one of the definite concerns is the idea that the maintenance just goes up typically 5%. Maybe some of it goes up 3%, but that's just kind of a fixed cost. We're definitely saved by offsets from the enterprise fund this year in terms of the salary rise for the CIO MLD, Todd Bowden, to cover justifiably extra work that he's going to have to do. We discussed two things. Stefan had questions around the chargebacks, the specific chargebacks to the schools and to the enterprise fund, to this and WMGLD and water and sewer, and whether those have been revisited recently and whether they have changed much over the years to reflect increasing costs, et cetera. And so that was definitely something that he wanted to discuss. And then Evan had questions around the insurance policy that we have for, experiencing an attack, an IT attack. And we won't go into the details here, but those were all topics that we discussed. And Mr. Mayo, if I recall, there was a time when we were going to have a meeting with various folks in town to discuss the specific IT security, risks. And that ended up not happening due to scheduling conflicts, I think, and would love to definitely make that happen at some point in the near future.
We can certainly make that happen.
Beautiful. And I would have let Stefan talk, give his own concerns, but he's not here yet. Evan, was there anything you wanted to add?
So this is a particular area of municipal government where I let the experts talk. Brian and Stefan are exceptionally qualified to talk on IT stuff. We did a lot of talk about IT security that I'm sure you didn't. I had just stepped away, Brian, so I didn't hear everything you said. But the budget to me was fairly benign, but the operational implications of some of the IT security conversations we were having. I do, believe it or not, everybody, I do a lot more listening than I do talking in those conversations. And I would just say that you're in very trusted hands, very capable hands between Brian and Stefan. So that's about all I have.
And
Maybe
just the last.
maybe some of us should show up to one of those meetings to witness that.
To witness me shutting up? Is that what you mean?
I also just want to say that it's pretty extraordinary that Todd is stepping up to do the extra work that WMGLD needs and doesn't have the resources to do. And overall, I want to again say that the situation, the relationships among the town, the IT department in the town and the IT department in the schools is so much better since Todd has been in charge. And I thank you profoundly, Todd.
No one thanks him more than me.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Any questions from the finance committee members? I have one, just walk us through again, like I'm trying to figure out, is the contractual services the reason why it's eaten up 2/3 of the budget? Is that just a timing issue, or should we expect that we'll be over budget for 2022?
Yeah, that is a timing issue. Sometimes we get billed annually towards the end of the year.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured, but I think might as well ask. That was my. And Todd, is there anything you wanted to say before the committee before we let you off the hook?
No, nothing that hasn't been said already. But if anyone has questions, yeah.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, the last 2 years, we have relied much more on technology. Hence tonight, our meeting tonight, and the recording of all the meetings and the broadcasting of all the meetings. So it's been quite a burden on a lot of people, and Todd's crew has done a great job. So we certainly appreciate it.
Here, here. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
You wouldn't happen to have a headset or something, because your sound is coming through like you're in the
am I
middle of a
sounding
tunnel.
terrible?
You sound like you're in the middle of a tunnel with surrounded by muslin.
Yeah, it's terrible, Doug.
Okay. All right, well, that we can try and fix.
I think it's your mic.
Wait, I just changed the mic on the camera. Does that
Much
sound
better, much better.
all right? So, yeah, oddly enough, it was trying to, take the mic off my laptop, which is underneath the desk here. So that makes sense. I'm in my office, my sort of real office. Sorry about that all. And thank you for that point of order. It's, it's often, Brian will be the guy who tells you you have spinach in your teeth.
And that's the kind of person you want by your side. Absolutely.
Indeed. Do we want to take do we want to take the police department next, or do we want to have is the library here? Are they presenting their budget, or is it?
Either one, you can go in order if you want. You may want to jump and take the minutes just so we don't forget. You do have the quorum of the town hall subcommittee there.
Okay. The town hall, yes, another out of order organization. So is there a motion to approve the minutes of the town hall subcommittee?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor from your subcommittee?
Aye.
Great, well done. All right, well, thank you. And again, thanks to Ray for keeping us on the straight and narrow. All right, going back, let's do the library, and then we'll do police.
So I'd like the idea of having Kevin go before me, unlike at town council. I think Brian had a great idea there. So Kevin, why don't you go ahead and start the library?
All right, I'll do the library. Library budget, we are requesting an increase of $65,465 over the current fiscal year. Salaries have increased $42,779. This includes contractual and negotiated increases. Sunday hours are included in the salaries this year. Under contractual services, there's an increase of $20,386. We have an increase to the automated network services, or Noble, of $4,861. We increased a couple maintenance line items totaling $7,698. And then we have additional software costs of $9,987. Small increase under materials and supplies of $2,300. The total budget request for fiscal 23 is $1,877,097, with $1,815,376 coming from the tax levy, and $61,721 coming from available funds. The available funds are the library trust funds.
So what I might add to that is the trust fund actually is a significant increase from where it was before. And some of the contractual services relate to building maintenance, because we did 1997, and Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 1997 is when we did the remodeling. And so that building is now 25 years old. And so some of the costs of maintenance is up. Also, because it's a public building, quite a bit had to be spent because of COVID in terms of cleaning up areas, sanitation, and so forth. So that's also part of the increases there under the contractual services. But all in, it was, we thought it was pretty reasonable. I won't speak for Teray, you can jump in, but I'm comfortable with the budget as presented.
Yeah, and I have nothing additional to add. I found the budget to be generally prudent, and we've reviewed it closely with the library director and the library board of trustees.
Thanks, guys. Edward, question?
It's Ed, of course.
Ed, sorry.
Point of clarification, how does the state aid factor into this budget, library state aid? So you're gonna get about 45,000 this year based on the cherry sheet. Does that flow to the trust fund or how does that work?
That money flows into a revolving account and is used as needed by the library.
And what is it usually used for? Like capital expenditures, one-time only expenditures?
Is Catherine on the line? I'll let Catherine.
Yes, most recently it has been for capital expenditures. We switched to RFID. That's the security system and book tracking system. We used the money for that. We'll open a digital media lab with all kinds of equipment, and we use the money for that. Over the years, it's been used for different things. You go back to 2008, and we used it for books.
Sure. And you're easily exceeding your materials and book requirement under the
Yes,
state.
we're comfortable.
Very good. And how are you funding the Sunday services? Is it overtime or is it straight salary? Or do you have a shift that works the Sundays?
That's time and a half.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions? One question from me, just in terms of the materials and supplies. We seem like we're requesting less than your sort of minimum required spend. Does that make sense?
Yes, the $200,000 is less than what's required. But there is also money in the Noble line item that is actually materials. That's databases and ebooks. So they're not, the materials that are physical, you're seeing in 5511.
Okay.
That's the 200,000, but there is extra money in that other line item.
Okay, so you're hitting that 245. You'll hit the 245 next year.
We do and sometimes there's a little gift money added to that.
Okay.
Because there'll be special collections that we'll buy with that, but we will hit that target perfectly.
Right, thanks. Any other questions? In the group? Hearing none. Okay.
Sorry, Doug, I couldn't get off of mute quickly enough.
Oh, sorry.
And excuse me if I missed this, but there were times in the past where we had some issues around making sure we were spending enough on the collection to qualify for state monies or something like that. How are we looking in terms of that today?
We're perfect. We're in very good shape.
That is great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions on the library, why don't we talk to the police? And Kevin, do you want to go first, or do you want?
Sure, I'll go first.
Story, or
I'll go first and then maybe Mr. Boothby.
okay.
Police Department budget, we're recommending an increase of $411,135 over the current fiscal year. The increase breaks down under personal services. The increase is $340,198. This includes contractual and negotiated increases. Also includes the return of the 4th of July line item for $38,000. There's an increase in the holiday pay line item of $86,854. 25,000 of that is for an additional holiday next year. And the balance of that was to right-size that line item. We've been underfunded in that line item the past couple of years. So we needed to make an adjustment this year or next year to get that right sized. Under contractual services, there's an increase of $70,937. The two big changes there, under computer software maintenance, we increased that $50,000. And that is for data storage for the body camera footage. And also we removed the, last year we had a COVID offset account for $18,750. That was used to help fund the mental health clinician. We're not doing that. We're keeping the mental health clinician. We're fully funding that, but we're getting rid of the offset. Total budget request for fiscal 2023 is $6,723,493.
Mr. Boudre?
Yeah, so, Kevin has laid out the numbers. I think maybe the chief might be interested to hear from him briefly, if he would like, about the body cams, which were acquired as a result of a grant for 50 body cameras for $75,000. And as Kevin mentioned, a lot of the increase in contractual services around having to have storage for those, estimated at $50,000. One of the things the subcommittee talked to the chief about, because the cameras were acquired via grant, he noted, we met with the chief and the deputy chief that, through the years, they've received grants for things like speed signs, bike rodeo, child safety seats, emergency medical dispatch, and tasers, which, is not only interesting, but it's great that they have people in the department. And, there's not one person who write grants, chief, there's multiple people who pursue those kind of grants. And we had a conversation about, pursuing grants and should there be some expertise at a different level, perhaps, and things like that. So that's interesting to know. I think, the cameras certainly are interesting in the process that the chief went through to get that okay from the two unions that are represented. The chief noted to us he has 2 openings on the department right now, 2 vacancies. We talked a little bit about the vehicle, acquisition process, which is of course in the capital budget, and a little bit about longer term planning, discussed the concept of civilian dispatchers, for which now the dispatch is manned by uniformed police officers, and Ed certainly has a lot of experience with that. I don't want to speak for Ed, but I think he was a little surprised to know that that we have uniformed officers performing that function. But of course, there's headcount considerations. And as we noted last year, the subcommittee, we met and came back to the larger body, the chief, has, indicated that with all the development going on in town and the literally hundreds of units between condos and apartments, that could cause for some future requests for more police presence. He, so noted to us that the apartments are the places where they get, many more calls than they do homes or condos or things like that. And of course, there are so many apartments going up around town. So just something to be aware of. Again, we did mention that last year also. And then the build out of the police department is scheduled to begin March 21st, so pretty quickly. And with multiple phases that overall would take about 12 to 15 months. So we covered some present, situations and talked a little bit about the future and what the future might hold for police department budget. And if Amy or Ed have anything else they'd like to add, welcome their input.
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well. I think we had pretty good robust discussion around everything. I think the body cam discussion was very interesting. I know I really had not taken into account the cost of the storage. So we had some good talks about the various companies that can supply those services and their costs. But I think you covered pretty much everything.
And I'd just like to say that from my experience, the State Executive Office of Public Safety does a very good job of funding both E911 civilian dispatcher training and operational costs. So there's something to consider the future. If we get to hiring civilian dispatchers, which certainly increases the productivity of our police force, there's an opportunity there. Align that with the need for more grant writing support, and I think that could be something to look at in the future. About 20% of my operations in Somerville for E911 are funded through state grants.
Chief, is there anything I maybe didn't touch on that you'd like to
No, I
mention or
think-
discuss?
I think that was a great summary of our conversation. I'll answer any questions anybody has about anything.
Questions, if you have questions, please either raise your hand using Zoom or raise your hand in real life. Dan?
Thank you. One thing that's a little bit confusing to me about, Kevin's comment about, right sizing on the personal services. We did not do a reserve fund transfer last year. So where did the funds come from for 21 or 20 that requires this right sizing?
That's what the holiday pay, right?
No, there's something else. The holiday pay was the additional day, but Kevin was talking about.
It's more than that, the way I understand it. Like maybe we didn't say that right. The way I understand is the holiday pay has been underfunded for some period of time, and this is bringing it up to a complete fund in addition to the new holiday, Dan.
Okay, so if I look
Two
at
two dimensions to that, Kevin, I believe.
I think what Dan is looking for is something that was underspent because holiday was overspent. Is that what you're looking for, Dan?
yeah, where do we get the money to cover? The shortfall is about $20,000 because we had appropriated 241 for holidays. We spent 267.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we didn't do a reserve fund transfer, what got shorted?
If you look at the court line item, because the courts, I think, have been shut down because of COVID or have been minimized because of COVID, that there hasn't been much court time spent in, well, specifically in fiscal 21, we only spent $18,000 and we had 87,000 appropriated.
So is that something that you can approve, Kevin, in your capacity without going like the town council or the finance committee?
Yeah, because it all falls under the salary umbrella.
Okay.
So as long as one line item might be overspent, one might be underspent, as long as at the end of the day, you're not in a deficit, it's not an issue.
Yeah, so it's all, as long as it's in personal services, it's not an issue.
Correct.
But if you had to move it from personal services to contractual services, then you'd have to move it up a layer?
Exactly.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Other questions? Sort of a question for me, sort of stemming along that same thread as Dan was talking about. The education incentive falls, and I guess that's generally getting it more in line with what was appropriated, but I guess I'm still trying to understand this, the 35% increase in holiday for one extra holiday. What, the one extra holiday is Juneteenth? Is that the holiday we're talking about?
But
So we added one holiday and we increased the rate by 35%. That's, and maybe we have been underspending there, but even if you get yourself back to the 270 you were doing, one extra holiday wouldn't result in a, $57,000 increase.
no, we're right sizing that, Doug, that if you look in the prior fiscal years, what we actually spent on holidays in fiscal 2020, we spent 247,000.
Yeah.
In fiscal 21, we spent 267, but we were only appropriating 241,000. So we were short at least $20,000 going into that.
Yeah, but
Just fiscal 21. It expands in fiscal 22 and 23. And then on top of that, you're adding in a new holiday. So altogether, that's how that figure came out.
Yeah, I guess that still doesn't add up to me though, because even if you were saying 270,000 to get you to $57,000 more for one extra holiday.
No, Doug, it does add up. You have to split it up in three pieces. One is the contractual increases in holidays. So let's assume that's like 4%. Then you've got to right size it, which I figured out was roughly 10%. And then you got the extra holiday, which is like another 20%. So there's actually three pieces to that increase: regular increase, one additional holiday, and right sizing when you compare 21 actual spend to budget.
Yeah, Dan, so you compare actual spend. So like, let's assume that actual spend was right sized. So then you're just adding the one holiday, which is another 10%, right? There's 10 holidays, 11, something like that. It just feels like we're double counting there, but that's fine. Because I'm also trying to understand, why don't you then right size your sub vacation where you've been over accruing forever? And again, that might be a way of like having something in the budget so that you can move money around a little. And that's okay, but it feels like, you know, the sub vacation's been overfunded for this whole time.
Doug, if you look at the holiday year-to-date expenditures through 6 months, that 153,000, the police, they get 12 holidays, 6 are paid in the first half of the year, 6 are paid in the second half. That is the first half of the year's payment. So if you double that and add on like a 4%, you know, you're getting close to that.
Okay. All right, that's fine. I mean, okay. So it's front loaded and there's one extra holiday. And so the question is yeah, so why are we paying, you know, without the Juneteenth holiday, why is our holiday budget gone from 267 last year to 300 this year? Is another interesting question. Like, why is our spending right now $154,000 through the first 6 months of the year?
Could be more bodies. I'm not sure.
I think that's what it is.
At what point in time, if when people came on the force, they may not have been eligible last year and they are this year. I'm not actually sure.
Just feels like, and then the contractual and negotiated increase in regular salaries. So that's 5.29% year over year from steps and or new contract. Like, think if other places came in with 5.3. Are we adding a number of bodies here, or is this same number of people, just 5.3% more money? That's for the chief or Bill or whomever wants to answer that one.
I think the salary wise, it's only 3.83%. And the step raises, there are the contractual raise, and then a longevity stipend for some people that qualify.
And promotions.
Okay, and what was the contractual rate, the public rate? Was that 3.5 this year or 2.5, Steve?
That would have been this year, I believe, was a 3.
3.5, I think we had.
No, I'm sorry, 2.5. 2.5.
Why is Bill saying
Next
3.5?
fiscal year, 2.5 on the COLA. On
But
the
it's
COLA.
3, but it's 3 next year, I think, Stephen, in fiscal.
Oh,
23,
okay, next year, 3.
if we're looking at a year ahead.
Yeah, okay.
It looks like
So it's
3.5.
3 that really turns into 4 with steps. Okay.
Correct.
That's generally what we see everywhere.
And I think, remember, there's only 4 steps, right, chief? 4 for the police, I believe.
Patrol officers union has 5.
5
Superior officers are at 4.
at 4, yeah.
No more questions from me. Evan?
Yeah, I just want to touch on the holiday. So where are we? Is this the first year of a new collective bargaining agreement? Where are we with the police? I know they're staggered. I
The
don't.
last year.
The last year.
Fiscal
It's just-
23 will be their last year of the current agreement.
I just wanted to surmise on the holiday pay there. Like it's also possible, and maybe the chief can answer this, but it could be a contractual term, right? Where I don't know, the holiday pay went from double time to 2.5 time this year, or it might not just be a function of bot. Like there might be something there that caused the jump. That's all I wanted to ask.
No, the holiday pay rate stayed the same. Last year was the first year that Juneteenth became a holiday and came out of that account.
Ah, okay. So you negotiated in a new holiday.
Well, it's a federal holiday. They get all federal holidays. So I
Okay.
would say federal government negotiated it in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, it's fine. Yep.
Dan, did you have a follow-up question?
I did. It's actually a clarification. I did the percentage increases for all the staff, and there's only one person who had less than 3.5% increase, and that's the chief. But everybody else had at least 3.5. Dominated throughout is 3.5%, and then a handful of people got more than that because of a change in rank. So the underlying COLA to me is 3.5%, not 2.5 or 3.
I had that 3.5 number. That's what I had in my notes. So maybe I don't know if I was wrong in that.
Yeah, I think 3.5 is right.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief or for the subcommittee? All right, retirement.
I just like to say before the chief leaves us that top to bottom, he has a great staff, and we are the envy of all the communities around us. So thank you, chief, for you and all of your capable staff there. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Doug, I might just also offer, I don't know if the folks from the library or IT want to stay on the call for the chief. I don't think there's any reason for them to stay on the call.
I don't think so, no.
Unless you're just terribly interested and you're riveted by this. Hang on.
Though you missed the chance for public participation.
But you don't have to stay on.
Yeah. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Chief. Doug, ready for retirement?
Ready for I'm very much ready for retirement. Jim can't come back soon enough.
Retirement budget for fiscal 23, we're requesting an increase of $466,409. This breaks down the increase to the tax levy, contributory tax levy portion of the budget. There's an increase of $487,932. The non-contrib tax levy portion increased $420. In the water, sewer, and light department, enterprise transfers actually decreased $21,943. This budget is based on an updated funding schedule voted by the Wakefield Retirement Board, runs through fiscal 2036, and is based on a January 2020 valuation. Total budget request is $7,443,814, with $6,087,779 coming from tax levy and $1,356,035 coming from enterprise fund transfers. Dan does sit on the retirement board with me. If Dan, you want to give some good news?
You want some good news? I'll give you some good news. So for the last 3 years, our money has been earning an exceptionally high rate of return. I think everybody's aware that the market's been doing well. And 2019, the trust fund returned over 16%. 12% in calendar 20, and about 20% in 21. So the last valuation we did, what that PARAC did, the state does it for us, was January 1st of 20. So we've had 2 years of 12 and 20% returns that are not reflected in these numbers. So this budget is based on that 20 valuation, but when we do that, we get the 22 valuation, which will come to us probably sometime this summer or early fall. I expect to have a lot of good news for Steve and Kevin regarding what the numbers will look like. I think we'll be able to shorten the amortization period from 2036. And I think we can flatten out the schedule a bit, because right now we're looking at some 8% annual increases going forward. And we just as soon avoid that. So we have a lot of good news. Also, we had a retirement board meeting this morning. We discussed some of this, and we did not have any disabilities. Accidental disabilities are very expensive. We have had very few, if any, I think in the last 2 years, maybe none. So that's helped us. On a sad note, but good note, the COVID-19 pandemic has shrunk our retirement population more than expected. So it's very sad, but it's also, it's going to help us out in terms of, going forward. So what I expect to do is be able to have some numbers for the retirement board for the March meeting that are based on 1/1/22, my estimate of what the state will come back with. But right now, the picture looks pretty good. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to mitigate some of the increases that are in front of us in the current funding schedule.
Any more questions from the group? I will say it's delightful that you do a 2-year valuation and you did 1/1/22. That's a nice date time picking there. Wouldn't want it be 1/31/22. But so
You're
yes.
giving us a preview of what's going to happen, Doug?
No, that's like 4 years down the road, Steve. We don't care. Question on like why did the light department's contribution go down? Is it just fewer people, or what's going on?
Right, less people.
Okay.
There's a bigger, more people on the town side. The water and sewer basically zeroed out, and the light department was down a couple people.
Yeah, and if I might add, the allocation between departments is based on salary. So less people usually means less salary, but if the light department was increasing their salaries, say more rapidly than the town was, but say it's the same number of people, then they would see an increase. So it's a salary-based, pensionable earnings-based allocation between departments.
And with that, we'll go to our penultimate budget. The Veteran Services budget, and actually, why don't we do, because that's the revisitation, right? The town council did. Why don't we do your town council budget, and then we'll do the discussion of Veteran Services.
Yeah. Okay. Town council budget, we're requesting an increase to this budget of $17,331 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down $13,831 increase to the tax levy portion of the budget, and a $3,500 increase to the water, sewer, and insurance transfer line item. There was an increase in personal services of $16,381, which includes contractual and negotiated increases. We also increased the hours of the Community and Economic Development Director. We increased that person's hours from every 2 weeks of 70 hours a week up to 77. So it was a 10% increase in the amount of hours being worked there. And we also increased the duties of Sherry Dalton as the committee coordinator She's handling all the Zoom meetings for the various boards in town. On the expense side of the budget, we have a small decrease of $2,550. Reduced several line items. The town report, we reduced that 500. Printing and stationery, we reduced 1,000. Postage 500 and office supplies $550. Some of the main expenses within this budget, the advertising line item, which is used to advertise town meetings, warrants, and also the town council hearings. And then there's a professional services line item for $26,000. 20,000 of that is dedicated to the town's traffic engineer, VHB. And the other 6,000 is for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where they handle our sealer function for the weights and measures. The total budget request for fiscal 2023 is $596,697, with $517,352 coming from tax levy and $79,345 coming from a water, sewer, and insurance transfer.
Any questions or commentary from the town council budget folk, or is? The only question I would have is in terms of the extra town council meeting, does that mean we're going to be going through the budget for next year?
I don't understand the question.
Well, aren't we having an extra election for town council? So do we have to do another extra advertising for that? And are we gonna, like, so the Danaco and
the cost for that?
special election?
That's under election expenses.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
that doesn't fall into the advertising.
No.
That just falls into the town meeting. So the advertising is just the town meeting budget. Okay.
Yeah, town meeting, and we have a public hearing coming up on the Verizon contract. So it's public hearings that the town needs to.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, but the town meeting warrant, you're correct. That's the big one.
All right.
I think Dan has his hand up.
Oh, Dan have his hand up again? All right, so not again, sorry, Dan.
That's all right, no problem. Either Steve or Kevin, can you help me understand the 9.5% pay increase for Erin?
Her hours increased 10%.
From what to what?
From 70 hours every other week to 77 hours every other week.
So now she's in line. She's
With everybody else, yeah.
Yeah, that now lines up with everybody else.
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the last item is the revisitation of the veterans budget. Steve, do you want to?
Right, sure. I did, as the FinCom requested, bring the budget back to the town council regarding looking at the trends there. And the town council is sticking with its original vote. I think Jim Sullivan was on the meeting. I don't know if any other.
He just gave me his feedback that the town councilors decided that they wanted to
Wait another year.
Yeah, they wanted to push it off another year. And they did say that. They did say, like, wait, like, let's do the watchful waiting and make sure. I think there is a great desire never to cut this budget and then cut it below where it's going to be. There's also, the elected versus desire of making sure that you're not cutting a very popular budget unless you're absolutely certain you can.
I think there was also some discussion there that there was some uncertainty on the part of some counselors regarding coming out of COVID, what does that mean? And will there be, more output, more outreach and, more units coming into town? Would that bring more veterans that are residents? So I think they wanted to look at it another year.
Sure, but they did definitely say another year, so I think.
They did.
I think this is a budget that we should be very aware of for fiscal year 23, although there may be people who opt not to vote for this budget in fiscal 22 or fiscal 23 versus fiscal 24.
Right.
Anyway. Any further questions on this, Dan?
Yeah. So I stuck around for the meeting.
Oh, you were there too, yeah.
And listened to the end because I was very interested in hearing what they had said. And I think they're receptive. A couple of them did say they were receptive to lowering it. And we pressed upon, I know Jim was part of it, but I know Steve was too, is like, we're going to get 3 bites at this apple, right? We can increase it in November if we had to. We can increase it in May if we had to, and we can do a reserve fund transfer. And I think what we didn't push really, I mean, Jim didn't push, I don't know, Steve didn't push on, is the fact that you're supposed to have a budget that's right sized. I mean, we quickly increase budgets if we come up short. For example, the police and the holiday, right? We increased that because it was not right sized. We increased the snow budget because it wasn't right sized. This one is clearly not right sized. The spend there is much lower and it's been going down. It'll continue to go down. And for them to delay was, I think, purely optics, right? It's a political statement that they were making that, gee, we don't want to cut veterans. Well, that's, they're not looking at the facts. And so they're not driven by the facts. They're driven by the optics. So to me, as a finance committee, we're supposed to be showing or this making representations to town meeting that our budgets are supposed to be right sized. And we do that going up or going down. And to me, I'm still feeling that we should cut it down. I think my original thought was like 140,000. I have to go back and look the notes. But to me, leaving it at the 170,000 or whatever it is for that one particular line item is just not prudent and contrary to the purposes of finance committee. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Dan. Evan, your hand's up next.
Yeah, I made my argument on this already. I mean, to Dan's points, I don't want to be redundant, but it's kind of just like a stupid number. It's like clear that we're not going to come anywhere near it. And that trend line has been decreasing across the state and probably across the country since long before COVID. And so I don't want to rehash the argument. I think everybody's made their points, but I do worry, to Dan's points, it's yeah, we're real quick to increase line items when we get close or come up short, despite all this reserve capacity we have, whether it's through the reserve fund transfers or free cash or stabilization or whatever else. And no matter what, even if we came up short in this appropriation, veterans by law are getting their benefits. They're gonna get their benefits. So the political argument to me, which was made early on in this discussion, which I understand, but I don't really have a ton of respect for the political argument. It's that's not why we're here. We're here to make business decisions. And this one is such a no-brainer to me. I don't understand why we would wait. I don't get it. But yeah, I mean, to either Doug or Dan's point, I forget who it was. Yeah, some of us might decide to vote against it. I'll just vote against it, and I'll try to make a Hail Mary amendment when this budget comes up for a vote to see if we want to recommend a lower number. I think we have enough evidence and enough historical data to say, yeah, we're not reaching 170 grand. These people aren't going to come out of the woodwork after COVID who weren't there before COVID. It'll probably even be still lower than pre-COVID levels. I understand, yeah, the units are up and maybe we'll get some veterans in these high-end apartment and condo complexes, but to me, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And I agree with probably everything Dan said.
Thanks, Evan. Any other questions or concerns? Ed?
I agree with both Evan and Dan. In the absence of any plan for outreach, I would support the cut. I mean, one could talk about that. I don't think that this is the demography, the demographic trend, I think, is clear right across the state. And you'd have to significantly outreach and concerted staff effort to reach out there. And I haven't heard any plan to do that. I have talked about outreach, but in the absence of that, I think it's prudent to make a cut and see what happens.
Any further questions? Thanks, Ed. The only other, oh, go ahead. Sorry, was there somebody?
Yeah, this is Brian. So did town council provide any insight into their decision to just say we stand by our voted budget? Or did they just say we stand by our voted budget and that was it?
No, there was engagement back and forth. They did talk about, maybe more people were going to be coming back. Maybe there was an Afghanistan lag of those people coming back. There was concerns about how quickly we can procure funds if we did cut this too much. And we did mention, or I did mention, the 3 bites of the apple. Also that in the past, no veteran had gone without services. We've never turned one away. And there were times that we did have to actually use reserve fund transfers in this budget. Uncertainty.
We did.
Yeah, we have in the past. Uncertainty regarding COVID and what that meant for some people. Also mentioned maybe there were more units coming in town, some of which will be affordable. So it won't just be all luxury units as much as Mr. Kenny just mentioned. I thought you weren't going to talk a lot, Evan. I don't know what happened, but in any event, but they were open to waiting and looking at this for another year. So
I said I wouldn't talk about IT.
Yeah. Valid point.
Yeah.
I guess the only, oh, go ahead. Who else?
We also did bring up the truth and budgeting argument as well. And I think they understood that as well, but they also felt that, hey, it went back to free cash anyway, at the end of the day.
Evan, actually, I'll go before I have you a second bite at the apple, Evan. No, I think the only other thing I'd add is, given what we've seen on the pension side with a reduction in pensioners, probably we're seeing COVID also probably resulted in a reduction of, service eligible veterans, which is sad, but also might be a reason why the number is much slower, shrunk at an increasing rate this past year. So I'm not, I think where I stand on this budget is relatively clear, but I will defer now to Evan for his sort of final bite at the apple, unless anybody who hasn't yet spoken on this wants to speak.
Yeah, I promise it'll be my final, but it's just like at some point, it's like so I love seeing this kind of diligence from the town council and everybody else in defense of not cutting a budget. And if we spent this kind of energy sort of resisting increases in budgets, like I'd be thrilled. Like we're working really hard to bend over backwards to rationalize not cutting this budget that's clearly out of line. And I'd really just love to see like some balance given. It's like we don't cut budgets. Like we don't hesitate to raise taxes to the levy limit every year to the penny. So like, great. All right, we're going to work this hard to defend not cutting a budget. Can we like work this hard to justify increasing them going forward? But that's all.
You don't go to the penny, Evan. All right.
I would add that many years we did not go to the levy limit.
We got close.
Yeah.
All right. Any further subcommittee comments?
Oh, I guess I just thought of one thing. I thought when we did discuss this budget a couple weeks ago, there was some history, but it wasn't laid out on a piece of paper or one of the handouts or anything. It was just talked about. So I guess what I'd like to see, and I don't know who's in charge of this, is Kevin or Steve, but I'd love to see the actual number of veterans that are applying for benefits and how much we spend for each, like say, the last 5 years. So we can see the trend line and the numbers and see where it's going. So if that's available, if you could share it with us and at least me, because I'd like to prepare something and think about it before we have our vote in April.
Yeah, I have that, Dan.
Okay, great.
Right, any other subcommittee comments? Bill and I can have a couple on the schools. We just met with them this morning. And Brian as well. So we met with the finance subcommittee of the schools, and they're coming before us 2 weeks from now with their preliminary presentation, not the final budgetary presentation. You know, normally it's worked pretty well the last few years, is having them come before us twice. There's, you know, they've done their meetings. They're working all the school vacation week to like build out exactly what their budget priorities are. You know, similar to the police budget that you saw is Christine has already talked to us, and like, you know, with steps and everything else, the 2.5% increase that they have in salaries is actually 3%. So going into it, they have a 3% baked in contractual increase. There's probably a couple of other items that are sort of going to be choices we're going to have to make. And it's probably in terms of you can either spend some money or more money. And there's a few other items on the docket, but it isn't projected to be a calamitously scary budget. We expect it to be, you know, at least somewhat pretty much in line with what we've forecast, but we'll have better details on that come the end of next week. And they'll be presenting to the school committee I believe that Monday, and then they'll come to us with their preliminary budget request. Anything that I missed, Bill or Brian, that you'd mention?
Well, I think, we mentioned not coming in, not literally, but, with 40 pages of PowerPoint, to try to summarize things at a high level by the major categories to let us know what they're going to do and what they're looking for, changes in those categories. So I think sometimes they've come before us. I think the detail personally is just beyond overwhelming to sit there and go through exhaustive presentations. I'm not saying they don't need to do that and put that together for the purposes of what they might have to do for the school committee, but I don't think that's necessary for us.
Right, and that's I did send them the copy of the page that we probably care most about, which is their year-over-year change by item. So that's hopefully where we'll get some fixation on. Brian, anything going on missed?
Yeah, I would add that they talked about how for special needs situations, the outplacement options are not actually there because they're having trouble staffing and remaining solvent. And so it's more, they don't have as many options in terms of how to deal with special needs situations. And it's an interesting process because if we can't send those kids out when we need to, then we need to be able to provide for them here. And in general, I think the district can perhaps do it more efficiently from a fiscal perspective if we have maybe if we join with other school districts and that sort of thing. It's an interesting topic, and it's something that's going to be problematic as we go forward, I think.
Any other upcoming budget groups have anything they'd want to sort of give us the heads up about? Oh, sorry, Dan, question?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I just noticed that Tim Healy joined the call. Tim is the chairman of the Library Board of Trustees. And Tim, we went through the library budget, not much in the way of questions, so you're welcome to hang around. But it looks like your budget's in pretty good shape. So I want to recognize that. On the schools, did they say anything about 2021 in terms of the spend? Are they going to have to tap into the sped reserve that we set up, or do we need to do anything about the sped reserve? Did that come up for 22? Anything on that you've heard?
It did not come up. I think they're hoping not to tap into that, but I think that's from 3 or 4 meetings ago. So I don't, it didn't come up in this most recent one.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else?
If the FinCom is ready, I have a couple of things, Mr. Chairman.
Sure thing.
Number one, on March 3rd, already into March, the FinCom will hear, another 6 budgets. So whoever is on the fire subcommittee, I don't think that they've met yet. So I think you may want to, whoever's on that, I think it's chaired by Dennis Hogan, who's not on tonight. So they may want to make sure they set up something with the fire chief ahead of time. It works much better, I think, when there's a subcommittee meeting ahead of time.
I'm on that committee.
Oh, you are that? Great.
Yeah,
great.
I'll just shoot Dennis an email.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The other item is, as subcommittees go, there's a few other small items or smallish items, including general insurance and workers' comp. Do we want to include those in the town hall budget committee? And we can do, look at those because those are basically ready. As is the Board of Health. Do you want me to include all of those in the town hall subcommittee? I know these guys want to have another meeting with me. They really want to, so. It's up to you, Doug.
I don't think so. I don't think we need another meeting with you.
Oh, I mean, you're not on the committee anyway, so.
What? Oh, okay, well, you said it was up to me, so I was like, no, no more meetings. I mean, if you think it's urgent or necessary, then sure. But
I think it might help. I think there are going to be some, particularly in the health department, the health department budget, not health insurance. There are going to be some interesting movement there. It might be to take a deeper dive, might be worth it with the subcommittee. So if that chair, Evan, is ready, can I coordinate that with you? See, shut off.
Sorry, yeah, you can.
Okay, thank you. Second to last thing is maybe I'll save this for next time, but Dennis Hogan last meeting asked a very good question on fire alarms and the charging of developers. And I will make sure to give a good answer at that at the next meeting. But in a word, most of the costs for hooking up to the fire alarm system is charged back to the developer. We might do a little bit of the work, small, but I think we got to make sure we formalize that with the developments, with the Board of Appeals, so that cost for labor materials, there'll be no doubt, will all be covered by the developer. So that was a good point for us to look at. My last point, and that's it, is that I spoke with Jim Sullivan, who would like to see if the Finance Committee was willing to move its second meeting in March, which is March 17th, to March 16th, which is, in his mind, would be a much preferable day. I think you can figure out why.
That's hilarious.
Only if he invites us to what he's doing.
I think he probably would.
Yeah, and picks up the tab.
So I throw that out for you to discuss that acting Chairman Butler with him.
for acting Chairman Butler, we can take a vote on that now. All in favor of moving the March 17th meeting to March 16th? Vote aye, raise your hands. Sure, the motion appears to carry unanimously.
Okay.
Um,
We'll set it up for that day then.
yeah, we'll mark Chairman Sullivan as having abstained, although it appears that that's the only thing he's going to be abstaining from, so. And just also to note, because the schools are now, I don't think we had initially slotted them in for their first presentation. So their first presentation to us is also going to be on the 3rd. The 3rd's going to be a long meeting for us, probably. So like budget accordingly, time-wise, that's probably one of the 9 or 9:30 ends, God willing.
I'll move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Movement to adjourn, a motion to adjourn. Seconded by somebody.
Evan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
All right, 8:11.
Not bad.